Hey guys, how you going? My name is Dom and today we're going to be learning how to use HTML and CSS to create a restaurant menu. Okay, so first off, I just want to say sorry if this video makes you hungry because there's going to be a lot of delicious Italian food here which I would definitely like to smash if I was at a restaurant right now. But anyway, the key concepts being covered in today's video is going to be CSS Grid and Flexbox and how you can use those two together to create something like this, as well as a responsive first design where we're going to be firstly building this with a single column layout for mobile devices before adding CSS to support larger displays in this dual column layout later on. Okay, so as we can see, if I resize down, we get this single column layout for mobile devices, and of course it works and looks quite nice there. So let's go inside this tab right here and begin from scratch to of course create what we just saw. Okay, so the HTML for that page looks like this currently. It is of course empty. Okay, so we're going to begin on the HTML before moving on to the CSS. Okay, so when it comes to the HTML, the first step is going to be to create a main container for the entire web page itself. If you've already got a main page container, you can reuse your one, but if you don't have one, you can create one just like this, a div with a class of container. So now we're going to have a second container, and this one is going to be a div, once again with a class of menu this time, and this one is going to be the main container for the menu itself. Okay, so when it comes to the menu, it's going to have basically two core child elements. The first one is going to be the headings for each one of your different menu groups, for example entree, main, dessert, things like that. So we can make a new h2 here with a class of menu-group-heading. So here, you can put inside here, like I mentioned, you can say for example entree with the nice E. I'll just copy and paste this one. So for example entree, and of course the rest of them following this. So now with this menu group heading, the next one is going to be your actual menu group. So this menu group is going to contain each item under the entree. So now we can say div with a class of menu-group, just like this. And like I mentioned, inside here now we're going to have each one of our different items. So we can see here, to cover essentially the entree section of our menu, it's going to take these two child elements. If we want, for example, to include the main menu items, we'd make a second, copy of this time changing this to be mains. And of course, now you've got your two categories right there. So let's just focus on the entree for now, and we can just copy and paste the rest of them later on. So for the entree, inside our menu group, now we can actually specify each one of our items, but I just want to pause here and move on to the CSS just to make some progress on that side. So I'm going to save this right here, go back inside the browser, and we have something like this. Okay, so nothing too special obviously so far, but let's go inside now the CSS and add some styles to make it look a bit better, and of course get some things working. So in the CSS, we're going to firstly target the main container class. Like I mentioned earlier, if you already have a main container for your web page, this step can be skipped, but in my case here, I'm going to set a maximum width of 1200 px for my entire page. We're also going to say a margin of 0 and auto. This will ensure that it gets centered, okay, so horizontally centered, and some padding of 1.5 em just to create some space along the edges of my page. So saving this, we get something like this in the browser. Obviously we get that space, that padding, and of course it is also centered, as we can see right there. Okay, cool. So moving on. Let's target now the actual main menu class. So for the menu class, we're going to set a font family. We're going to say sans serif. Of course, you can include whatever font you like here. We're also going to set a base font size of 14 px. So The reason for this 14px instead of something like 16px is because, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing this mobile first. So to have the image and the text side by side on mobile, it can get a little bit, tight on space. So having this slightly smaller font size is going to help that. For our desktop devices later on, we're going to increase this font size to be 16px, but basically, having this base font size here means that a few of our properties later on, in the actual menu are going to be based on this font size, and it's all going to scale nicely. So just use a base font size right there. Now, for the actual menu group heading, this one here, we can target the class of menu-group-heading. Okay, and for this one, if I can spell correctly, here we go. So for the menu group heading, we're going to set a margin of 0 just because we're going to be using padding instead to create some space. So we're going to say here padding-bottom and set this to be 1 EM. Okay, alongside a border bottom of 2px solid and then CCC for a light gray. So now saving this right here gives us something like this in the browser. As we can see, we've got this space here between, of course, the menu heading and the border on the bottom. Now, keep in mind that with the usage of the EM unit right here, this just means 1 times the current font size. The current font size is 14. So basically 1 EM means 1 times 14, of course giving us 14. Now, when we move on to desktop later on the desktop version, it's going to have 16px as the base font size. So the margin here, the actual padding here is going to be increased alongside the font size of the desktop version. But anyway, let's move on now to targeting the actual menu group, and this is where CSS Grid is going to come into play. Okay, so just as an example right now, I'm going to create a couple of sample items. So we're going to say here div just like this and say 1, and we can say 2, and we can say 3, just as an example. Okay, of course saving this in the browser gives us something like this currently. So of course each item on their own line. So we want, for desktop devices, we want it to be a 2-column layout. So because we're going to be developing this mobile first, we're going to begin with a single column layout and then of course move on to dual column for our desktop version. So let's go back inside here. We're going to be targeting the main container, the menu group container. Okay, so we're going to say menu-group. So for this one here, we're going to be displaying this as a grid, just like this. Now, for the grid template columns property, this allows you to specify what your columns are going to look like and how they're going to be sized. So, in our case right here, we want to have a single column layout, which means we can just say 1 FR right inside here. This means basically each item in our menu group, so each div right here, each div is going to take up 1 of the total free remaining space. So basically, each grid item or each column is going to take up the full width of our menu group, giving us a single column layout. We're going to be changing this right now, very shortly, to a dual column layout using media query. So let's just finish this off first. So we're going to say gap here of 1.5 EM. So a gap of 1.5 EM is going to add, of course, some space. 14 times 1.5, once again the base font size, so 14 times 1.5 of space between our menu items, each item. Okay, also some padding. We're going to say padding 1.5 EM top and bottom, and then 0 left and right. We're going to see how this works right now, but I'll just save this, go back in the browser. As we can see, we have of course, if I inspect the menu group, we've got the grid working right there. We get each one of our individual, cells right there. And, those two center purple diagonal lined sections is our grid gap. Okay. And of course we have our actual padding on the top and bottom there for the menu group. Okay. So that's fine. Let's have a look now at the actual dual column layout. So for the 2-column layout, let's go back inside here. We're going to target, okay, we're going to say at media, screen, and then min width going to be something like 992px. Okay, so basically if the screen is more than 992px in size, then we're going to apply the desktop styles. So we're going to firstly target the menu, and we're going to set the font size here to be 16px. Once again, just setting that base font size to be larger on the larger displays, as well as, of course, the menu group class, and of course giving us that grid template columns now, changing it from the 1fr to be this time instead repeats. We're going to say 2 then 1fr. This now means this repeat of 2 1fr just means this right here, 1fr space 1fr. Okay, so what this means is basically we want 2 columns taking up the total space they can evenly. So basically 2 evenly sized columns. If I save this right here, go back in the browser, we can see we get the same thing. But if I zoom out to basically replicate a large display, on this large display we get our 2 columns right there, and the grid has transformed, of course, into that 2-column layout. But of course it is responsive on mobile, giving us that single column layout when it's required. So there we go. That is basically the main grid part done. Now, of course, we could have used Flexbox for this, but having grid is going to allow us to not only extend on this later on and create more complex layouts, but also it allows us to take advantage of the gap property. So this gap property would take a lot more work to get working on a multi-dimensional sort of layout with Flexbox. You need to use margins and possibly even things like saying only apply margins on the last child or every second child, things like that. So having this gap property and using grid makes it super easy to create larger layouts on the web, whereas Flexbox, we're going to see very shortly, is better suited to smaller sort of minute layout items. So let's move on now to the actual menu items. So let's go back in the index HTML, and we're going to be replacing all of these divs here with an actual menu item. So this looks like this. We're going to say a new div with a class of menu-item. So of course this represents a singular item on the menu. So for this one, we're going to be having basically an image portion and a text portion. So we can make a new image tag right here with a class of menu-item-image. Inside here, we can just say, for example, going to images / let's do bruschetta as our first image or menu item. Give this just a bit of alt text. We can say bruschetta inside there. Okay, cool. So we have this right here. Now, of course, saving this, we can see the image goes to its maximum size, and this needs to be fixed, obviously, even though, of course, the food looks fantastic at this size. We can, of course, fix that. But anyway, let's go back inside here and finish off the HTML. So the remaining of the HTML for this menu item is going to look something like this. So we're going to have this separate section now. For the right side, this will be the menu text or menu item text. So div with a class of menu-item-text. So for this one here, we're going to be having basically just the main heading as well as the description. So we can say right inside here, h3 with a class of menu-item-heading. Inside here though, okay, so inside this menu item heading, we need both the actual name of the dish or the item, then of course the actual price of that item on the right side. So for this, we can make 2 spans, one span being a menu-item-name. Inside here we can just say, for example, bruschetta. Okay, then a second span, this one here is going to just say price. It'll be, for example, something like $12.90. So I might just stop here. Okay, I'm going to save this, go back in the browser. We can see we get something like this where we have the menu item heading on the bottom here. So let's fix all this up. So when it comes to the menu items, okay, we're going to be using Flexbox. So we want, as we saw in the actual example, we want the images to be on the left side and the text to be on the right side. So basically we have the images here, text here. So that is perfect for Flexbox. It's very easy to do. So back inside here, let's target the menu item container. Okay, so menu dash item. So for the menu item, okay, we're going to be saying display and make this flex, and that is basically it. So now by doing so, if I save this, we get this right here where the text is now on the right side. So it is now positioned with 2 columns basically. So the main part is going to be now to style up the actual image. So let's target the image here. We're going to say menu item dash image. So for the menu item image, we're going to be giving this a width of 80px for the so 80 on the height, and then also 80 by 80 is what I'm trying to say. There we go. So 80 by 80. This will also be larger on desktop devices. So let's just copy this rule here, or this rule set, and paste it down here and make it so they actually become 125px on the larger devices. Okay, so that's fine. Let's save this. Let's also give this a flex shrink. We're going to see why right now. Back inside here, as we can see, we have, of course, the actual image. And we have, of course, it's set to be, 80 by 80. Now, the problem is, if I add some text inside this section here, for example, add some dummy text, save this back in the browser, we can see the actual image gets, squished by the text. So to prevent this from happening, we need to go back inside here. We need to say flex shrink and set this to be 0. Save this. Now we can see the image goes back to the 80 by 80, width and height, which we set it to. Also, the image has been, squashed down and skewed. So we're going to be setting an object fit on this image here. We're going to say object dash fit here. Okay, make this cover. So now we can see, look at the bread here. The bread's going to change. So if I save this, go back in the browser, the bread has now, returned to its original aspect ratio, and it looks nice. Okay, we're going to also add some margin here to create some space between the text and the image. So back inside here, let's just say margin dash right, make this 1.5 em. Let's save this back in the browser, and we get this space added right there. Quite straightforward. Let's just zoom out right now, and we have something like this. So let's now target the actual text. So when it comes to the actual text, if I remove some text here, just to demonstrate something for you guys, I'll save this. This menu item, this paragraph tag, this whole text, item right here, it doesn't span to the right side. Okay, so to fix that, to make everything, look, neat, we need to expand this text to take up the entire remaining space. So let's go back inside here. Let's target the menu dash item dash text class. We're going to say flex grow and set this to be 1. Let's save this back in the browser. Now we can see we have the whole width, remaining space taken up by the text, which is good. So let's move on now to styling up the actual heading. So for this, we're going to be targeting, of course, the menu dash item dash heading class here. And we're going to say a display of flex. We want the actual item name to be on the left side and the item price to be on the right side. So we're going to say display flex right here, followed by a justify content of space between. So saving this here, we can see by using flex on the actual container right up here. So on that main menu item heading container, we've got these 2 child spans. So by setting the flex on the main container, then space between as justify content, we're adding space between our 2 spans. Left side for the text, right side for the image. Sorry, for the price. That's perfectly fine and obviously looks nice. So let's now remove some margin here to make the heading be in line with the top of the image. So back inside here, we're going to set a margin of 0 on the heading. Save this, back inside here, refresh, and it looks perfectly fine. So we're almost done, guys. Just need to finish up a few more things on the name and the description. So here's the problem. If I resize this, the price is right up against the name right there. Okay, so if I make this name a lot larger, let's make this bruschetta with a space and copy it a few times, just like this. So we can see, obviously, in larger cases, it doesn't look too nice. Of course, that space isn't there. So to fix that, it's quite straightforward. Obviously, just got to add some margin. So let's go inside here. Let's target the menu-item-name class. Of course, the name refers to the container for the span here, or just the span, not the container. So for this one, we can just say margin-right as 1.5 EM. Now, we can see here I'm also using 1.5 for the padding, the gap, the margin right here, the margin right down here. So I'm trying to keep it consistent. So try and use the same values for your padding. And of course, if you can, use EM. That way it's relative to your font size. So on larger devices, as the font size increases, so will the padding between your items. And it all looks nice and uniform. So anyway, let's just save this right here, go back in the browser, and we can see that problem goes away. And of course, now we have that gap between our text right there and of course the price. So that's good. So the very last CSS rule set to cover is going to be for the actual text down here itself. So I'm just going to go back in the index.html. We have this paragraph tag as a child of the text container. So for this one, let's give this a class of menu-item-description. Okay, so you can make as many of these paragraph tags as you like. It's up to you. But of course, in this case right here, I'm going to copy and paste my description of dummy text from my example and paste it right there. Let's go back in the browser and we get this. So of course it looks not bad, but the problem is, right, the line height isn't too high. Okay, so I want to be able to increase the line height to aid in legibility, make it look nicer and read a bit easier. So back inside here, let's target the class of menu-item-description, just like this. Right up here, there we go. And add a line height of let's do 1.6. Okay, save this back in the browser, and we have, of course, a lot more space between each line here, and it makes it look a bit nicer. Now, let's remove the actual, duplicate text. I don't know why that's still there. Back inside here, remove our multiple bruschettas, and I'm going to show you guys real quick, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to show you how to include a custom font for your web pages or whatever you're doing. So if you head to fonts.google.com, okay, it's a popular free website for getting, free fonts and things like that. You can choose your font from this page. So in my case right here, I use the Inter font, but I just want to show you real quick. If you choose the category of, sans serif, you're going to get the sans serif fonts. And you can, of course, also specify a number of styles if you want bold, italic, normal, light, etc. Increase your style count. If not, whatever you want to do, guys, but just choose your font. In my case, I used Inter, this font right here, as my example. Wherever it is, there we go. So just choose your font just like this. Then to include it, you just want to basically pick which sizes you want. So in this case right here, we're using bold for the headings and also normal font weight for the actual text. So we need bold 700 and normal 400. Okay, so back inside here, we're going to target, or we're going to select the bold 700 and also the regular 400. Select both those styles right up here. Then to use them, just copy and paste this link code right down here into the head of your HTML. So right up here, include those just like that. Then in your actual, CSS file, well, actually in the web page, it gives you examples of how to actually use it. So of course, just copy and paste this font family code right here, and we can just paste it inside our main menu class right here. Save this, go back in the browser, and we are done. We've got our custom font included right there. Not much difference from Arial, of course, but there we go. And that's all. So I'll be leaving the code to this in the description below if you want to download it. And if it wasn't obvious enough, guys, if you want to have multiple items, you just need to copy and paste your HTML. So let's just quickly demonstrate before I go. So I'll just copy our menu item right here, make it happen twice, save this back in the browser. On larger displays, it becomes 2. And of course, if you want your multiple different menu groups, your entree and your main, dessert, whatever it is, just copy and paste your menu group heading and your menu group. This one's saying, let's just do dessert. Let's go straight to dessert, okay? Save this back inside here. Now, of course, we have the dessert section right there. So that is how to create a menu using HTML and CSS. I'll leave the code for this in the description below if you want to download it and check it out. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.